Welcome back to Newsmax Now. I'm Miranda Kahn. At the United Nations in New York today, leaders from 171 countries signed the Paris Agreement on climate change. That's supposed to be a key step towards stopping climate change. On hand for the signing ceremony today, leaders like French President Francois Hollande, as well as Hollywood actor and environmental activist Leonardo DiCaprio. Secretary of State John Kerry calls the agreement a commitment to win the war against carbon emissions. Most scientists say those emissions are making the world hotter every year. The United States and China, which account for nearly 40% of global emissions, have said they intend to join this year.
All right, thanks, Miranda. We'll be back with her in just a second. Joining us right now is a man who's kind of an outlier in the Republican Party, someone who actually believes that climate change is happening. Congressman David Jolly of Florida.
Good to be with you.
Thanks so much for being with us. Since it's Earth Day, we want to talk about your position on climate change, since it's somewhat unique in your party. But first, something else that's different about you as being a member of Congress is you actually want to ban your colleagues who work under the dome with you from asking people for money. It's called the STOP Act. Tell us about it.
It's called the STOP Act. Not only do I want to do it, I've sworn it off personally. And understand, this would be a ban on the personal solicitation by a member of Congress to ask anybody for money. State legislators in Florida and many other states are prohibited from raising money when they're in session. Judges in 30 states are prohibited from raising money. This is less campaign finance reform, and it's more about get back to work. You know, I'm a new member of Congress, first-time candidate, and what is shocking to me and should be shocking to every American is the amount of time members of Congress are expected and in some cases required to spend raising money. 20 to 30 hours a week raising money instead of legislating and doing your job.
In France, that's a full-time job, 20 to 30 hours a week.
That's right.
In 60 Minutes is actually going to profile this this coming Sunday, but you've been working on it since January, actually. And you actually drew some inspiration from Democratic Congressman and the chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, Steve Israel. And he wrote, he spent roughly 4,200 hours in call time and attended 1,600 fundraisers just for his own campaign, raising $20 million in increments of $1,000, $2,500, $5,000. He wrote this in the New York Times. I mean, that's hard to ask people for that much money.
With all due respect to Steve, there's no inspiration I draw from that.
Okay.
And here's why. I actually launched this before he penned his article. Retiring members of Congress are always happy to discuss this. So Steve announced his retirement and then confessed to how much time he spent shirking at his job by raising money. Why is it only retiring members of Congress are willing to talk about this? Frankly, it's an admission of guilt. And the cynic in me would say it's so they can sell you a book and get even more money out of you. Let's do something about it while we're here. Democrat freshmen are told to spend 20 to 30 hours a week raising money. Republicans are given a chart to say, here's how you shake down the American people to get money out of them. What's not getting done? Tax reform, border security, transportation, national security. The reason we're not getting that done is because we've got a part-time Congress and a full-time world. They're not at the Capitol doing their job.
And you have seen results from this, actually. I asked you before we came on the set here, you know, well, how are you going to raise money? Because it's still going to cost between $4 to $6 million to run for a U.S. congressional seat. How are you doing?
So we leave it to the campaign finance team, to a professional staff that runs the campaign to make sure we have the resources. Since I announced the STOP Act, since I announced a pledge that I would no longer directly solicit, our contributions have gone up almost threefold. Look, I'm a Pollyanna, some call me naive. I believe if you do your job right, the politics will take care of itself. The STOP Act has proven that out.
And interesting, too, and we also discussed this election cycle, when you look at Donald Trump, who's sworn off super PACs, and you look at Bernie Sanders, who's sworn off super PACs, particularly in Bernie's case, he has raised a lot of money in small increments. Do you think that is a sign of hope for the future, that money won't be so intertwined, or fundraising won't be so intertwined in politics?
I hope so. Whether you're on the left or the right, you know we can do so much better than the system we have. How do you protect the constitutional privilege of everybody to participate in an election with reasonable regulation? What I've suggested is if people want to participate by giving, by waving signs, by making calls, they can still do so. But let's take the member of Congress out of the equation. We are failing the American people as a Congress. We are shirking our duties. We are violating the public trust when half your Congress is across the street at party headquarters in these hot call booths shaking down the American people for money. It's the one thing that Republicans and Democrats agree on in Washington. It's that their first priority is to ask you for money.
And I'm sure there's lots of folks out there who might consider running for Congress, but they just don't want to do that, so they'll just stay at their day jobs. It's interesting. Let's bring Miranda back in here, because I also want to talk about your position on climate change. And, and it's because it's somewhat unique. Miranda?
Yeah, Congressman, this is video of you speaking a couple of months ago at the University of South Florida. Is it true that you told the crowd that I think the climate's changing, I think man's had an impact, and we need to stop arguing about science?
It absolutely is. Listen, the climate has changed for thousands of years. Every time we turn on a light, every time we fill up our gas, every time we crank the car, man's having an impact. Here's the important thing. Conservatives have better solutions to the impact. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Let's accept the science. I believe as a Republican we fall into a Democratic trap by suggesting we're going to argue the science. You know what we win on? Policies. Make the president justify why he kills jobs by issuing regulations that industry can't meet, a blended fuel standard that adds additional costs and can never be met. Let's talk about conservative solutions, incentivizing clean energy development, getting solar to a return on investment period where the economy can grow and employment and job growth can grow as well. We can win as conservatives if we fight over the solutions, the contest of ideas. When we fall into the trap of fighting over the science, I believe we lose politically.
And, you know, we look at what's happening in New York today at the United Nations. This isn't to say that you are in favor of the United Nations coming in here and telling us what to do with our carbon emissions.
I disagree with the president's solutions, and that's why we should accept the fight. Let's have a fight over the ideas. Frankly, I think the Paris Accord for the president will be a fairly forgettable moment of his administration. It raises some sovereignty issues. What can he promise? What does Congress have to do? Let's fight over conservative solutions that incentivize new industry, incentivize new jobs, and protect the economic growth. A large manufacturing facility in my district, in the St. Petersburg area of Florida, just went all solar. One of the largest warehouses in the entire state went all solar because the return on investment now makes sense. If the administration had mandated that 5 years ago before the return on investment didn't make sense, they would have had to lay off employees to meet that additional cost. Conservatives know how to grow the economy, protect jobs, and yes, take care of the environment in the process.
Now, along with yourself, Congressman Carlos Corbello from Miami and Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, also from Miami, they are on your team and saying, like, look, there are things happening. We need to talk about solutions.
That's right.
No coincidence, you guys are all from Florida. This is a big issue in this state. Also, there's people who represent districts in, say, Lower Manhattan that also had issues with Hurricane Sandy.
Well, let me give you something else that's not talked about. We fall in a trap over progressive solutions only in Washington, over regulation. You know, one of the first things we need to do is local governments need to begin to underground utilities, raise infrastructures, deal with beach erosion, begin to address protection of life and safety and property. Those are local government solutions that conservatives can also lead on.
It's interesting. You know, that's such a tenet, such a foundation of conservatism.
That's right.
Handing the power back to the local government so they can do the job, because they know those communities.
Where's the water rising? It's in our backyard.
Right. Let's give them the tools they need to deal with these situations. Congressman David Jolly, good luck on your Senate run.
Thank you very much.
And good luck in your upcoming debate with Alan Grayson on Monday.
Looking forward to it.
I'm sure you are.
Thank you.
All right, we got more to come here on Newsmax Now. Stick around. Coming up, we're going to talk to Newsmax health editor Nick Tate about music legend Prince and his death. What we're finding out today that could signal some troubling concerns about Prince. Also, United Healthcare leaving Obamacare. What does this mean for the president's signature health care law? Reach out to us also. You can reach us on Twitter at Newsmax Now. More coming up after this.